My name is Vivian Hansen, and at 32 years old, I had built a life that many would envy. As a director at Powell Corporation, my years of relentless dedication had led me to the top of my field. My office in Manhattan overlooked the city skyline, a view I had earned through years of sacrifice. Yet beneath my success lay a past woven with duty, obligation, and the constant weight of family expectations that had been placed upon me since childhood. As the eldest of 3 sisters, my life had never been my own. My mother had handed me responsibility early, disguising it as trust. "Vivian, can you watch Natalie for a bit?" she had asked when I was only 6. That bit turned into 3 hours, and then years. While my friends played after school, I was at home feeding and soothing my younger sisters, Elena and Natalie. By the time I was 12, I was cooking dinner for the family. By 16, I was running the household, managing everything from groceries to laundry. When I hesitated to sacrifice my own dreams, my parents reinforced the expectation with guilt. "Vivian is so responsible. She would prioritize family over anything else," my father would say. And I did. Every single time. My sacrifices grew larger as I aged. At 18, I had meticulously planned a spring break trip to Miami Beach with my friends. I had saved every dollar, dreaming of that brief escape. The night before my departure, my parents called me into the living room with solemn expressions. "Your grandmother fell ill," they said. "We have to go to Texas. We need you to take care of your sisters." When I argued, they shut me down. "You're the only one we can trust." The next morning, I watched my suitcase gather dust, while my friends sent me photos of the beach. A week later, I discovered my parents had never gone to Texas. They had been on a couple's retreat. "Sometimes we need time for ourselves," my mother had said unapologetically. College was no different. I had earned scholarships and worked part-time to support myself, but my parents had other plans. "Elena got into Princeton," my mother announced one day, her voice filled with pride. "But she needs help with tuition." I protested, explaining that I barely had enough for myself. "But you're getting a scholarship, right? And you're working part-time?" my mother pressed. My father added, "Shouldn't we help each other as a family?" I took on an additional job, stretching myself thin to cover Elena's tuition while juggling my own studies. For 2 years, I worked tirelessly, only to receive a half-hearted "thanks, Viv" when she graduated. By the time I entered the corporate world, I had become an expert in saying yes. Yes to every family event. Yes to planning both of my sisters' weddings. Yes to covering their expenses when they fell short. Yes to babysitting their children on weekends while they enjoyed vacations with their husbands. My time, my money, my energy, it all belonged to them, and they never saw a problem with it. Last year, I spent my birthday alone in my apartment. My father's voice joined in, full of that familiar condescension. "She needs to focus on her studies. Family helps each other, Vivian." And just like that, I found myself working an additional job, morning shifts at a campus cafe, nights at a bar, just to pay for my own tuition and Elena's as well. The exhaustion was bone deep, but when graduation came, the only family member in attendance was my father. My mother was at a Princeton event with Elena. Natalie was busy with exams. "Sorry, Vivian, but you'll be fine, right? You're always so independent," my father said, as if that excused everything. The years passed, and I worked relentlessly, climbing the corporate ladder until I became a director at Powell Corporation. I was the first to arrive and the last to leave, my work ethic earning me respect and promotions. But no matter how far I climbed, my family still saw me as their safety net. Elena's wedding? I planned it from start to finish while juggling a critical project at work. Natalie's children? I became their weekend babysitter because she and her husband needed a break. When Elena got divorced and moved back home, struggling financially, I started covering household expenses. "It's only temporary," she promised. But temporary turned into years. Then came the final betrayal. It was my mother's 60th birthday, and my sisters called, saying they wanted to plan a grand celebration but needed my financial help. I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money, believing it was for a family trip we would all enjoy. Then, on the day of departure, I arrived at our parents' house, suitcase in hand, only to find the place empty except for my sister's children. A letter was left for me on the kitchen counter. "Vivian, we've already left for a week at Sunnyside Resort. This is an adults-only trip. After years of being tied down by childcare, we finally get to enjoy some freedom without the kids. We stocked the fridge, and the emergency contacts are on the counter. Caleb needs his medicine at 4 p.m. We'll take lots of pictures for you. Love, Mom. P.S. Elena checked the resort's babysitting service, but it was fully booked. The kids are comfortable with you, and this was the best way." I stared at the note, my hands trembling. They had taken my money, taken my time, and abandoned me yet again. The realization hit me like a freight train. This was not just a one-time betrayal. This was the culmination of a lifetime of being used. For the first time, I wasn't going to be their doormat. I picked up my phone and made the call that would change everything. Days passed, and the excitement surrounding our mother's birthday celebration grew. I barely had time to dwell on it, buried under an avalanche of work. My sisters were secretive about the details, dodging my occasional inquiries with playful remarks about keeping it a surprise. In the rare moments of calm, I convinced myself that, for once, my contributions to the family would be reciprocated with something meaningful. I should have known better. The evening before the trip, I finished an important deal at work and left my office with a sense of relief. The weight of the past few weeks had been suffocating, but I told myself that a break, even a short one, would be well deserved. I drove to my parents' house, my suitcase in the back seat, expecting warm greetings and last-minute preparations before our departure. Instead, I was met with an eerily silent home. I knocked, then let myself in. The sight before me was not what I had anticipated. Instead of the lively chatter of my sisters and parents, only the children remained. Ethan, my nephew, was the first to greet me. "Auntie Vivian," he called cheerfully, running toward me with open arms. My confusion grew. "Where is everyone?" I asked, glancing around. "They left," Ethan said nonchalantly. "Grandpa said you'd be here soon." A creeping unease settled in my stomach. I walked to the dining table and noticed an envelope with my name on it. My fingers trembled as I tore it open, eyes scanning the neatly written note inside. "Vivian, we've already left for a week at Sunnyside Resort. This is our adults-only trip. After years tied down by childcare, we finally get to enjoy some freedom without the kids. We've stocked the fridge with food for the children. The emergency contact list is on the kitchen counter. Make sure Caleb gets his medicine at 4 p.m. Don't worry, we'll take lots of pictures to show you when we get back. Enjoying adult conversations and cocktails. Love, Mom. P.S. Elena checked the resort's babysitting service, but it was fully booked. The kids are comfortable with you, and this was the best way. Don't take it the wrong way. Just do your best for us, as usual. I gripped the note so tightly that the paper crumpled in my hands. My own family had done it again. Not only had they taken my money for the trip, but they had also left me behind, without my consent, to babysit their children. My body tensed, anger and betrayal bubbling beneath the surface. I took out my phone and called my mother. It went to voicemail. I tried Elena and Natalie. Same result. After several more attempts, Natalie finally answered. "Hey, Vivian," she said hesitantly. "Have you arrived at the house?" "Natalie," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "What is this? You left me behind?" There was a pause before she sighed. "Listen, Vivian, it wasn't my idea. Mom said, Vivian is always so responsible and reliable. She'll understand." "I didn't agree to this," I said, my voice shaking. "I was looking forward to this trip too." "But you get along with the kids," Natalie said, trying to sound reasonable. "And since you're single and don't have children, you don't really need a vacation like this, do you? We just want to enjoy some adult time. We've been tied down by the kids for so long. Don't we deserve a little break?" Her words shattered something inside me. "Listen," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm calling a professional babysitter right now. That way I can catch a flight and join you." "That won't work," Natalie exclaimed. "We can't leave the kids with someone they don't know. Caleb gets anxious around strangers, and Lily is still a baby. Honestly, we just want some time away from the kids. Vivian, please. Can you watch them for us? Just like you always do." Just like I always do. I took a deep breath, my decision crystallizing. "No." "What do you mean, no?" Panic crept into Natalie's voice. "I'm calling a professional," I repeated firmly. "For the children's safety." "Vivian, stop." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my mind had never been clearer. Without hesitation, I called the police and explained the situation. Then I contacted the National Child Abuse Hotline. They promised immediate action. Finally, I sent the same text message to the entire family. "The children have been left unsupervised. I have reported this to the police and Child Protective Services. I suggest you come back immediately." My phone immediately began to ring with frantic calls. I ignored every single one. Instead, I sat down in the living room with the kids, ensuring they remained safe and calm. About an hour later, a police car arrived. 2 officers entered the house, assessing the situation with sharp eyes. 30 minutes later, a social worker from Child Protective Services arrived. I explained everything to them. Just as the sun began to set, the front door burst open, and my panicked mother rushed in, with my sisters and the rest of the family trailing behind her. "Vivian," my mother exclaimed, "what have you done?" An officer stepped forward, his voice firm. "Are you the guardian of these children?" My mother, cheeks flushed, replied, "Yes, I'm their grandmother. What happened?" The situation of minors being left without proper supervision was discovered by Vivian Hansen, who appropriately reported it to the authorities, the officer stated. "You and the other adults will need to accompany us for questioning." My mother faltered. "Vivian was supposed to take care of them. She agreed?" "No, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I didn't agree. You all just assumed." The social worker stepped forward and requested identification from all the adults. One by one, they were escorted out of the house to be questioned at the station. The gravity of the situation was finally sinking in for them, but for me, it was long overdue. That night, as I tucked the children into bed, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. For weeks after my family left me behind with the children, a simmering anger burned within me. I had spent my entire life being their crutch, their problem solver, their reliable fallback. This time, however, something inside me had snapped. I wasn't going to be their doormat any longer. The social services intervention had been a wake-up call, not just for them, but for me. The weight of their manipulation had lifted, and for the first time in years, I could breathe. I cut off financial support immediately. No more monthly contributions to my parents' household. No more covering emergency expenses for my sisters. The backlash was immediate and vicious. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Elena sent passive-aggressive texts about how she was struggling to make ends meet as a single mother. Natalie outright accused me of being selfish and ungrateful for abandoning them in their time of need. But I held my ground. I refused to respond, refused to engage in their emotional manipulation. Instead, I focused on my own life. I threw myself into work, earned a promotion, and finally began indulging in the hobbies and friendships I had long neglected. For once, my time was my own. Months passed, and while I had found my peace, my family was crumbling. My parents, now under scrutiny from Child Protective Services, had lost their credibility in their social circles. My father's business took a nosedive as word of their neglect spread. Natalie and Elena, who had relied on me for so long, struggled with the reality of full-time parenting. Without me to fall back on, they were drowning under the weight of their own responsibilities. Then, nearly a year later, my mother showed up at my office unannounced. She looked exhausted, older, and defeated. I hesitated before letting her in, but curiosity got the best of me. "Vivian," she said, voice thick with desperation, "we need your help." I folded my arms, leaning back in my chair. "What kind of help?" She took a shaky breath. "Your father's business is failing. We've lost nearly everything. The house is at risk, and Natalie and Elena are struggling to regain custody of their children. The legal fees are overwhelming. We need a loan." I let her words settle, let the weight of her plea hang in the air. A year ago, I would have given in without question. But now, I saw her request for what it was. Another demand, another expectation that I would sacrifice my life to save them from their own choices. I shook my head. "No." Her face crumpled in shock. "No, Vivian, we're family. Family helps each other." "Real family respects each other," I said coldly. "You never respected me. You used me. You abandoned me. You stole my time, my money, and my dignity. And now that you have to deal with the consequences, you expect me to bail you out." Tears welled in her eyes. "Please, Vivian. We're on the verge of losing everything." I met her gaze steadily. "Solve it yourselves, like adults." She let out a shuddering breath, realizing that for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to cave. Without another word, she turned and walked out of my office, shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closed behind her, I felt nothing but relief. I had finally broken free. I had finally chosen myself. The silence that followed my words was thick, heavy with unspoken truths and long-buried resentment. My mother, once the orchestrator of our family's expectations, now sat in stunned disbelief, her composure cracking. My sisters, who had always relied on me without question, were finally seeing a side of me they had never considered before, a version of myself who was no longer willing to be their lifeline. "You can't just cut us off like this." Elena's voice was unsteady, caught between anger and desperation. "We're family." "Exactly. And that should have meant something before you all decided I was nothing more than a free nanny and financial backup," I replied coldly, my voice carrying the weight of years of suppressed frustration. Natalie, who had been quietly observing the exchange, let out a sharp breath. "So, what now?" "You just abandon us?" she asked bitterly. I leaned forward, leveling them with a gaze that was neither cruel nor compassionate. It was simply resolute. I am choosing myself for the first time. I am giving you all the opportunity to learn how to manage without me, the same way I had to learn to fend for myself while carrying all of you on my back." The words settled uncomfortably in the air, their truth undeniable. "You think you're better than us because you have your fancy job and no kids to worry about." My mother's voice was tinged with bitterness, a final attempt at manipulation. "No, Mom," I said evenly. "I think I finally understand that family is about mutual support, not servitude." My father, who had remained silent through most of the confrontation, finally spoke. "If you walk away now, Vivian, don't expect us to come back to you when you realize you need your family." His voice was cold, issuing what he thought was a final warning. I smiled. A small, sad smile. "I think you misunderstand. I'm not losing a family. I'm losing a burden. And if you ever truly need me, not just my money, my time, or my sacrifices, I hope you'll have the courage to ask for it without entitlement." With that, I stood, grabbed my coat, and walked away. A year passed, and the consequences of that night unraveled in ways I could never have imagined. My family, so accustomed to my constant giving, struggled to adjust. My mother and father, having relied on me financially for years, faced mounting debts. My sisters, used to leaning on me for childcare, had to finally figure out how to balance their own responsibilities. At first, the messages and calls came frequently. Pleas, accusations, and attempts at guilt-tripping. I ignored them all. Then, as the months stretched on, the contact lessened. They learned painfully that I was no longer an option. For the first time in my life, I was free. With the weight of my family's expectations lifted, I flourished. My career at Powell Corporation reached new heights as I was promoted to senior director. I traveled, something I had never been able to do before, exploring the world without having to ask permission or make room for someone else's needs. I built friendships, real friendships, not just ones that revolved around my availability to help. And most importantly, I built a life that was finally mine. One day, there was an unexpected knock at my office door. My assistant Clara poked her head in. "Vivian, your mother is here to see you. Should I send her in?" My heart didn't race like it once would have. Instead, I felt nothing but a quiet sense of control. "Let her in." When my mother entered, she looked older, more tired, more defeated. "Vivian, I came to apologize." Her voice wavered, and for the first time in my life, I saw not just my mother, but a woman who had lost everything because of her own choices. I crossed my arms, waiting. "And?" She hesitated before sighing. "Your father lost his job. We are struggling. Natalie and Elena are trying, but it's not enough. We need help." I exhaled, slowly, then met her gaze. "No." She flinched as if struck. "Vivian." "No, Mom. I spent my entire life helping you, sacrificing for you, giving everything I had until I had nothing left for myself. And you never once stopped to consider me as a person with my own needs. This is not my responsibility anymore." Tears filled her eyes. "But we're family." I gave her a small, sad smile, the same one I had given my father that night a year ago. "Yes, and that should have meant something before you decided I was only worth what I could provide." She left in silence. I sat at my desk, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, feeling lighter than I ever had before. The guilt, the obligation, the burden, it was all gone. My family had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, they had given me something far greater: freedom, and I intended to live it to the fullest.